From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, March 23rd, 2 p.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We will first hear from County Counsel Margot Razon for a report from actions taken in closed session.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. This morning you met in closed session on items 58, 59, 60, 61. There are two items listed on the agenda for item 62. You heard one case and one was withdrawn, and you also heard item number 63.
Thank you. The County of Kern has provided notice that as a result of the declared federal, state, and local emergencies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in light of the governor's orders, this Board of Supervisors meeting is not physically open to the public. Testimony and general public comment are accepted via email or voice message to the clerk of the board prior to today's meeting, and live comments via teleconference will be heard during the meeting. We will begin by considering the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA or C above the item number are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. The CA represents the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors. The C represents the consent agenda for the Kern Sanitation Authority. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the public wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. At this time, I will read the consent agenda item numbers for the Board of Supervisors agenda. And that is items 6 on page 3, 7 on page 4, 9 through 14 on page 5, 15 through 18 on page 6, 20 through 22 on page 7, 23 through 25 on page 8, 26 through 29, page 9, 30 through 33, page 10, 34 through 37, page 11, 38 through 41 on page 12, 42 through 46 on page 13, 47 through 53 on page 14, 54 through 57 on page 15, 54 through 61 on page 15, 62 through 70 on page 16, and 71 through 76 on page 17, and 77 through 86 on page 18. And that is all for the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I believe item 73 is off consent.
Okay, I must have missed that one. So, thank you for noting that. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the consent agenda?
There is no public comment for the consent agenda.
Okay, any board members would like an item moved for discussion? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent and adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Kern Sanitation Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
All ayes.
Thank you. We are now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority and will consider the consent agenda, which includes item C1. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on this? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent and adjourn as the Kern Sanitation Authority and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors.
So moved.
All those in favor, please cast your votes.
All ayes, and just to confirm, there was no public comment.
Thank you. Okay, our first item off consent is item number 2 under public requests. That is a request of Karen King, Chief Executive Officer of the Golden Empire Transit District, to address the board and provide an update on the Golden Empire Transit District activities.
Thank you, Chairman Peters. It's a pleasure to be with you and the board this afternoon. I have been asked to be brief, so I am going to attempt to do that. I have prepared just a couple of slides that I would like to share with you today. I want to talk to you a little bit about some things that we have going on at the district that might be of interest to you. But before I get into the present and talk about the future, I do want to talk a little bit about the past year. Forget, like all businesses and public agencies, this has been a difficult year. This graph shows you on the blue line the last year, fiscal 19-20, ending in June last year, what happened to our ridership. We had been tracking pretty consistently with the 18-19 year, and then in March and April, our ridership dropped nearly 70% and has tracked at that level since then. In response to that and the commensurate loss of revenue that went along with that, we did scale back our service to better meet the current demand. And to accomplish that, we have been operating on a Saturday schedule and service span for the past year. The primary difference is that some buses run less often, and evening service ends about 7:30 in the evening instead of going until 11 o'clock. And we do get requests to reinstate that service. So we're looking at two primary issues this year: our fiscal sustainability and how do we get our ridership to rebound. With that, we have pivoted in this past year and are looking at different service offerings for the future. In 2018, April of 2018, we introduced our ride service. You may be familiar with that. It's an Uber-like service, only it's shared ride. It was in the southwest part of Bakersfield. We are now rebranding that as on-demand service and are working with new cutting-edge technology. We're really leading this in the nation to integrate that formerly called ride service, our Get a Lift paratransit service, which is our ADA service, and our non-emergency medical transportation that we offer in conjunction with Kern Health Systems. And what that means for our customers is that all of those customer groups will now be able to use an app and request a ride in real time. That will be a much better service for them, and it will also help us to be more efficient and free up capacity to be able to carry more people. Interestingly, our ride service suffered the least ridership loss in this past year. And we and many transit agencies across the nation believe that this type of service is, this micro transit, as they call it, is going to be in much greater demand in the future. So you may have seen these billboards are going up around town. The exciting news that I want to share with you is this area outlined in red is the original zone in which we piloted the ride service. Beginning April 4th, we're adding these blue areas. This is downtown out to Beale River Road, up to Panorama, down to California. Later in the year, we will be looking to square this zone off by adding this southeast section of Bakersfield coming up to Olive Drive and out to Frontier High School. That will take a little time because we don't presently have enough vehicles to do that. But last Tuesday, our board took some actions to try and restore public transit service to the metropolitan Bakersfield area. Besides approving this expansion of the on-demand zone, they also approved going back to 15-minute frequency on routes 21 and 22. Those are the most heavily used routes in our system. They also approved restoring evening service on routes 21, 22, 44, and 61. And then possibly most exciting, they approved expanding the on-demand service to our entire service area in the evening only, to replace fixed route evening service beginning in January of 2022. So we're taking bite-sized pieces, trying to perfect the technology and perfect the rider experience and expand this, what appears to be a preferred mode of service as we progress through this year. Before I take questions, I'd just like to touch on a couple of quick things that we're also doing. In May, we will begin taking delivery of 5 hydrogen fuel cell buses. That's our first step toward meeting the California Air Resources Board requirement that we transition to zero emission buses for our entire fleet by 2040. We are working with the county's aging and adult services to provide shuttle service to the fairgrounds for seniors and disabled persons to get vaccinations. We are offering a summer youth pass this summer, trying to get a rebound on our fixed route service. Student riders make up more than 20% of our ridership pre-pandemic. So we will be offering a pass during June, July, and August for anyone 20 and under. That is only $20 to ride for the month. And then lastly, I just wanted to alert you that you should be receiving a box in the mail sometime later this week that will contain an invitation to a virtual ribbon cutting for a project we've been working on for more than 10 years, and that is a new transit center at California State University, Bakersfield. This new facility will be shared with Kern Transit and will be, it's really a beautiful facility if you like bus facilities. And we would encourage you to tune in on Wednesday, March 31st at 2 o'clock to view the virtual ribbon cutting. Last thing, these two icons up here, the green one with what looks like a snake on it, is the app for getting real-time transit information about when your next bus will arrive. And then the one on the right is our new on-demand ride app. You can download that, click on there and make a reservation to take a ride on our on-demand service within the zone. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. King. I appreciate all the information. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, we're not seeing any, but thank you again, Ms. King, for sharing that with us today.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3. Public presentations will now be heard. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name before making the presentation. Madam Clerk, is there anybody wishing to speak under public presentations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received one email from Juanita Garcia regarding domestic violence, which has been distributed. We also have one caller in Teams. Rochelle Clausen, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. You have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Clausen. I battled mental illness for 30 years now, diagnosed with depression, anxiety and panic disorder, and trauma-related PTSD. I've managed to get through life with ups and downs, mostly not on medication, using CBT and established coping skills, and only needed med intervention during crisis. I've been in crisis the last 6 months, trying to many avenues for help. My PCP mismanaged my meds, started me on Zoloft, didn't refill, had withdrawals for a week, and then back on it, having night terrors, and wake up in a panic, choking, sometimes throwing up. I've been talking to a counselor for 30 minutes every 2 weeks since January, awaiting my psych appointment. That's Friday, only 30 minutes. Just to be left feeling still medically. I had a night terror around 3 a.m., February 23rd, that escalated into an uncontrollable panic attack. After 15 minutes, my 12-year-old called 911 and told them I was having a panic attack. And not able to respond to him, I don't remember this. The next thing I came to, I was handcuffed in front of Mercy Hospital, barefoot, no socks, cold, with security and an armed guard. Am I being addressed?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was hearing feedback. I was mistreated and verbally abused by the security for 3 to 4 hours until I had another panic attack, falling and hitting my head on the concrete. Finally treated in the ER, the security supervisor came on, and my hospital record showed my history of panic disorder, and I had no criminal arrest history. Finally uncuffed and discharged, escorted across the street, and the security called my son to pick me up. My son told me him and my family were calling around for hours trying to find me, all the hospitals, 3B, Mary Kay, and the police department. They had no idea what happened to me after I left in the ambulance, and that caused great strain on my family, especially my kids. I've made calls and never heard back from Mercy Halls or patient rights advocacy groups. I need accountability.
Ma'am, you're about 30 seconds over your time limit here, but if you could, I'll give you the number for my office. If you could reach out, and my staff will help direct you to somebody that can hopefully try and help you out with that. My office phone number is 661-868-3650.
I'm sorry, 661.
868-3650.
Okay, well, thank you for hearing me today. And
Thank you.
I have spoken already.
Okay, is there anybody else wishing to speak on public comment?
No, that's completes the
Okay,
the
thank you.
public comment.
Okay, next is item 4, board member announcements or reports. Are there any comments from the board? Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Clerk. Sorry, I thought my
Button and muted you, Supervisor Maggard.
Okay, thank
Apologize.
people have been trying to do that for years. You were successful. Somebody, Miss Juanita Garcia wrote an email to us that was in our comments this afternoon. I've read the email, clearly she misunderstands the role of the county in her problem. So could somebody from our side email back to her and explain that her concern is solely involved in the city and trying to connect her to the right person? Thank you for doing that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other announcements or reports from the board? Okay. Next is item number 5 under Planning and Natural Resources Department. And that is the request of RB Inyo Kern Solar Project by R&L Capital to change the permitted uses to allow the construction and operation of solar photovoltaic electrical generating facility and battery energy storage, and amend the circulation element of the Inyo Kern specific plan on 208.43 acres located 2,500 feet south of U.S. Highway 395. I'll turn it over to Planning Director Oviatt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. I'm here today with Craig Murphy, Assistant Director, and Renelle Candia, who is the Supervising Planner for this project. As noticed, this is a proposed project for commercial scale solar, 26.6 megawatts. It's in the unincorporated community of Inyo Kern. If we could have the overhead. I'm sorry, the computer overhead. This project would include authorization, as noted, to construct the 26.6 megawatt solar voltaic power generating facility, associated infrastructure, including off-site intertie connection lines, as well as an energy storage with battery facility, an unmanned operation and maintenance building, and transmission, as I noted, and gen-tie lines. This proposed facility is located within the Inyo Kern Airport Influence Area C, as well as in the vicinity of China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station, which is approximately 8 miles east of the project site. The actions before your board today include a request for 2 conditional use permits, an amendment as noted to the circulation element of the Inyo Kern specific plan to eliminate a portion of a future designated secondary collector roadway, which would no longer be necessary once the project was implemented. This project is zoned industrial. An environmental impact report was prepared for this project in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. Pages 9 to 29 of your staff report detail the environmental process, comments received, and responses. I'd like to highlight a few parts of your staff report and clarifications for the record. First, an important issue, because this project is within Inyo Kern, is the Indian Wells Valley Sustainable Groundwater Agency. And this project is subject to those authority. This basin is in a condition of critical overdraft for groundwater, and the final EIR did look at the use of groundwater in efforts to reduce fugitive dust. A solar photovoltaic is not a big user of water, but there is a certain amount of dust control that is critical to not only the health of the people who live in the vicinity, but to the ability of China Lake and the R2508 complex to have clear skies. Therefore, we have recommended mitigation measure 4.10-3. This will require a will serve letter. They have already provided us a will serve letter for the Inyo Kern Community Services District, but they will be required to get a new one. Or if they want to put in a well, they would require a letter from the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority saying that they can actually drill that well. Or if they cannot obtain one of those two, they would need a letter from a water purveyor outside the basin showing that they have sufficient water for dust control. So no construction can occur until they do any of that. In addition, we would note that as this site is zoned M2, medium industrial, the landowner could construct and operate a number of more water-intensive industrial commercial uses on the site without any additional environmental review or discretionary approvals. Therefore, the construction and operation of this solar facility may actually reduce the overall water demand in this area for this particular piece of property, which is 166 acres, would be taken up by the solar project. Based on the overdraft conditions, however, there is a determination of significant and unavoidable impacts, and your board will need to make findings of overriding, a statement of overriding significance for this specific water impact. The CEQA documents have been provided to your board through the process from the beginning, the notice of preparation to the response to comments, letters of support, as well as letters of concern with comments have been included in the staff report. Based on the whole of the record, the final EIR is legally adequate and in full compliance with CEQA. The Planning Commission heard this item on December 10th, 2020. Support and concerns were raised in public testimony. They've been addressed again and addressed in the staff report. Commission by unanimous vote of 4 ayes with Commissioner Sprague absent, recommended approval of the project for the CUP and recommended approval for the related actions. Since the Planning Commission hearing, we have received additional letters. First, I'd like to address a letter from Adams, Broadwell, and Cardozo that was received last night. This is a group, this has been provided to your board. This is a law firm that represents Citizens for Responsible Solar. The letter notes that they are that their members are labor organizations. They continue to take issues with mitigation measures that have been provided for biological impacts as well as revegetation. Staff has carefully reviewed this and is recommending a clarification to a mitigation measure. If we could have the overhead, well, oh, there it is. This is a clarification to mitigation measure 4.1-3. The original mitigation measure was that the site would be monitored annually for a 3-year period. We have determined on our extensive solar projects that successful revegetation is achievable in 3 years or less. However, we wish to be cautious because of the location of this in the military airspace complex. Therefore, we are providing that the site would be monitored annually for at least 2 years following the restoration activities, and if efforts to revegetate prove in the second year not to be successful by 75% cover rate, they will implement adaptive management to achieve successful coverage, and we will continue to monitor it to ensure that we have revegetation. So we will have a slightly revised recommendation at the end of this presentation. The second clarification that has been provided in your staff report is a clarification for a variety of uses to address the issue of the solar tax exclusion that was brought to your board in December. Staff has carefully reviewed the cumulative impacts of 36,000 acres of large-scale solar in Kern County. we have determined that the cumulative impacts on aesthetics go beyond those that we first placed in our environmental impact reports. And we have attached to your staff report these clarifications for the final EIR. First, we are irrevocably changing the character of the desert area. So there's a cumulative impact on aesthetics that goes beyond merely the biological impacts and the changes to the view shed and extend to the community experience of the desert. There is a particular relationship that the desert landscape has to people who live in these communities, people who buy houses, people who move their businesses here. And we have identified that there is now an overwhelming impact from these 36,000 acres that extends beyond the mere view shed and extends into the ability of these communities to keep businesses and keep their residences. In addition, this cumulative impact, combined with the current property tax structure, impacts our ability to provide public facilities for these communities. Without property tax revenue, which is the fundamental engine of the general fund, and your ability to keep libraries open, to provide for the facilities that are needed, these communities start to go into decline. And without these essential facilities, businesses do not locate or businesses close and move. These are, under CEQA, actual physical, structural changes to these communities. So it is not specifically just the public facilities. It is this cumulative impact of the size and the amount of land that we have actually converted that contributes to this situation. We also reviewed the information regarding the fiscal emergency of the Kern County budget and placed that in the record, because that is also part of this cumulative impact as a result of the property tax structure of large-scale commercial solar projects like this one. As you know, the state of California has provided an exclusion of assessment of the solar equipment. No other industry has this type of property tax reduction outside a local government providing a specific incentive for development. This results in the underlying land of solar project and others not paying property tax revenue that provides for these facilities. While it is true that the value of the underlying land of the solar project and some improvements, such as an operation and maintenance building or battery storage, pay, the actual panels themselves and the majority of the equipment are not assessed. This is a direct impact from the project structure and the land, and I would note that your board takes into account on all land use projects the economic benefits and the economic structure and weighs that against the environmental impacts that the project brings. As this property is zoned industrial, the potential tax benefits of a different land use would be even more. Therefore, in your staff report, we clarified mitigation measure 4.14-2 for a cumulative impact charge, a CIC. It's calculated on net acreage that excludes accessible structures and permanent improvements and legally unbuildable land, such as recorded easements. The concept behind this is established in CEQA. Cumulative impacts must be looked at. All of the solar projects, past, present, and future, that are in our docket for processing, must be looked at as an environmental impact. And when we look at that, we look at some other land use could have been built on these properties. And those land uses would have provided for a certain level of property tax revenue for the general fund. So the charge factor was calculated based on the fair share under the government code, not more than what the government code would provide, but what the government code, that the project would have paid if the tax exclusion was not present. The amount the project should pay would be calculated as $550 per net acre annually. This is in addition, of course, to the normal property tax revenue legally assessed on the property and that is provided to the general fund. We did not look at any other contributions such as schools or special districts. We are focused on your board's authority under the California Environmental Quality Act to look at your impacts. Your board on December 8th, 2020, accepted a report on the amount of the deficiency in the revenue from the state of California active solar energy exclusion and indicated to staff that you wished us to re-examine our projects. And you indicated, however, that you were interested in an accommodation for projects that had been deemed complete on December 8th, or a certain number of projects. We believe that projects that had paid their fees and had already been in process on December 8th, when this change was brought to your board, would be a category that we would consider bringing to your board for this accommodation. This is the first of those projects, and we've identified 10 of them. In this case, the charge would be $620 per net acre paid at the time the first building permit is issued. So remember, this is net acre. They take out their O&M building, they take out their recorded easements, net acres. The previous mitigation was only on the panels. And we've determined that that isn't an accurate way to look at this because none of that land inside the conditional use permit is open for another use. Therefore, they have tied up all of this land for their solar project. Whether they put a solar panel on it or they leave it open, they have precluded the ability to build something else on that land, and therefore it is the net acreage of all of it. The contribution from the project can only be estimated as the net acreage has not been calculated, but we estimate on this small project, it ranges from $79,000 to about $95,000 one-time charge. If the solar exclusion was not applicable, this project would pay an estimated $94,000 annually in additional property taxes to the general fund. And I would note that the previous public services mitigation was narrowly focused at that time on only specific public services and actually did not address the cumulative impacts that caused blight and decline in communities for the entire 36,000 acres. We are recommending this change as your board's accommodation for this specific project and is necessary to make the findings in section 15093 statement of overriding consideration. The benefits of this project, in staff's opinion, without this cumulative impact charge, do not outweigh the cumulative impact of changes to the character of the desert landscape and lack of provision for funding for public facilities in the region. So without this cumulative impact charge, you would have to make a determination that the impacts to public facilities was significant and unavoidable. And under CEQA, you cannot make that determination if there is a feasible mitigation, and in this case, there is. Further, the findings on the conditional use permit that the project would not impact the health, safety, and welfare of the community, staff now believes cannot be made without additional contributions under this mitigation. Fiscal contributions of projects, as we discussed, are an important and essential element of land use decisions and should be considered by your board as the county main source of revenue for these facilities and services is property tax revenue, not sales tax. I'd like to bring to your attention a letter that we have provided to you for the record. This letter was submitted directly to your board. It's from 3 associations that represent the solar industry: the American Clean Power California, LSA, which stands for Large Scale Solar Association, and SEIA, Solar Industries Association. This letter takes exception to the CIC. It does provide their background on why their industry needed this. They note that other adjoining states, such as Arizona and others, also have provided this property tax reduction. However, nowhere in the letter does it address that the Kern County has agreed to this. Your board has approved these projects. Your board has processed these environmental impact reports. The letter attempts to make the case that without that reduction, none of these projects would have been built in California. We believe that that argument is not relevant to your board's decision. There are many, many projects that have come before your board that behind the scenes have complained about the mitigations that are required because of our location. So for example, we require a voluntary emission reduction agreement on our environmental impact reports. We have projects that come from out of state that complain and say we can't build in California if you impose this. The requirements of what mitigation needs to be imposed is based on an analysis in the environmental impact report and is not an economic incentive that your board can then say, okay, we're going to take that mitigation off so that you'll come and build jobs here. This was imposed by the state of California, not by Kern County. Kern County was not asked if they wanted to incentivize inexpensive electricity, and we agreed on the first 36 projects and the first 36,000 acres to accept this solar tax exclusion. We are now re-examining that in light of the continued push for more green energy. An article was just released that verified that Kern County provides 25% of the renewable energy in California. There is no other county or city that provides the amount of energy that we provide or the amount of acreage. So there's clearly a cumulative impact with concentrating. Second, this letter appears to mischaracterize the cumulative impact charge. It makes statements that we have inaccurately presented this charge as an accommodation, and therefore this should be enough, that we should not look at the next group of projects for imposing 550. That mischaracterizes this. This is not an accommodation by the industry. This is an accommodation by your board. And your board today could impose the $550 per net acre, which is the correct amount on this project. I am recommending that you not do that, but I want to be clear, because of this industry letter that was submitted to you, that this is not an accommodation by the industry. This is your board taking a business-friendly approach and noting that these projects were in process. They had signed power purchase agreements based on what they thought the Kern County policy was. Kern County is re-examining our CEQA documents for impacts, and we have brought to you a solution for these 10 only. I think the last part of this letter also mischaracterizes this as a fee that has to go through the government code for exactions and fees that are adopted. It brings up other fees, such in Riverside. This is not a fee that we are imposing on large-scale solar. We will continue to do individual environmental impact reports. We will continue to look at the cumulative impacts. They may not all be approved, and therefore their projections of $17 million from these projects is inaccurate. This is an individual consideration on each one of these projects, but we are going to continue to look at the cumulative impacts. These 10 that are going through this process, which this is the first, would add another 27,000 acres. So on top of the 36,000 acres we will have another 27,000 acres that would be under the exclusion and only under this accommodation, which, if they were all approved, which is not necessarily true, they would not produce $17 million. They would produce about $9 million over the next 3 years. So we then have, on top of that, another group of projects. And those projects are being proposed at a different amount. At any step in this process, your board could indicate to staff on each individual project what you want to do. However, we must be consistent. The zoning government code requires consistency. So I am bringing you this number, $620, as a one-time charge, payable at building permit, the first building permit, as an accommodation by your board at this change in direction. The last thing I would mention about this letter is their implication that if your board follows the law and imposes this under California Environmental Quality Act, projects may not consider locating in Kern. Once again, this is not new to your board. This is not new to the CAO. We have had companies who have come to California, come to Kern. We've explained the rules. We've explained what's necessary to mitigate our impacts. They have indicated that their economics don't work. And we leave that to the market to figure out, instead of leaving it to that Kern County must give up revenue in order to attract businesses. The last piece of this is an economic study that was attached. It makes assumptions about 51,000 jobs. We could not validate that 51,000 jobs, that's almost as many jobs as the entire county was actually generated by this. Second of all, they talk about sales tax and employees tax. We have verified that on a typical solar project, only 1/3 of those people live in Kern County. We are pulling from Lancaster, Palmdale. They are buying houses in Lancaster, Palmdale. They are buying houses in Santa Clarita. They are not necessarily, but we are being generous. They are part of our Antelope Valley for Eastern Kern, and we are being generous about that employment. And while we want to put people to work, people who come to a job here to a project that doesn't provide property taxes is not a plus for us. People who come here to work at a job that does provide property taxes to us is a plus. And we certainly are looking for those types of economic development. The final EIR contains 62 mitigation measures to reduce project and cumulative impacts associated with this project. Proposed mitigation measure monitoring program, which will be revised, listing all the mitigation measures, has been attached to your staff report as Exhibit C for review. And the findings, which we will be revising for this mitigation measure, are in Exhibits A and B. The conditional use permit contains 33 individual implementation actions and the required findings. And one of those findings is that the public health, safety, and welfare will be, that this project will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. And with these conditions and with these mitigations, we believe those findings can be made. Staff recommends approval of actions needed for project implementation as consistent with the economic development direction of your board for appropriately located, environmentally mitigated projects that provide jobs and revenue for county services. I did, in my notes, overlook the applicant has asked me to let your board know that the applicant is not a member of any of these solar organizations or associations and did not participate in the formulation of this letter. The recommendation is slightly amended from the one in your staff report because we brought forward these mitigations. The recommendation is to certify the environmental impact report, adopt revised section 15091 findings of fact and section 15093 statement of overriding considerations, adopt revised mitigation measure monitoring program, adopt resolutions and recommended findings, approving conditional use permits subject to conditions, approve amendment to the circulation element of the Inyo Kern specific plan amendment as requested, approve the memorandum of understanding agreement, and recommend the Board of Supervisors chairman to sign. That completes my presentation, and I'm available for questions after public comments.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. We'll now open a public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have 4 voicemail messages. Glenn Casanova, Richard Chapman, President and CEO of Kern Economic Development Corporation, Scott O'Neill, Executive Director, Indian Wells Valley Economic Development Corporation, and David Garrison, the exalted ruler of the Trona Elks Lodge. And we will hear those now.
Good afternoon, Chairman Peters and fellow supervisors. My name is Richard Chapman, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, C-H-A-P-M-A-N, the President and CEO of the Kern Economic Development Corporation. speaking in support of RB Annual Kern Solar Project, which is agenda item number 5 in the afternoon session. Kern EDC's mission is to cultivate and promote Kern County's boundless opportunities for business, and we take immense pride in promoting Kern County as the energy capital of the U.S. The proposed 27-megawatt solar generating facility will also include battery energy storage units. The project will produce approximately 50 local construction jobs, in addition to indirect and induced employment during the construction period. These jobs are critical during these times. Indeed, January 2021 employment figures reached almost 11%. In addition, the project will generate approximately $450,000 in local sales tax revenues. Thank you again for your time and consideration of this project.
Hi, this is Glenn Casanova, Glencasanova. I'm calling about agenda item number 5 to express my support for the RB Inyo Kern hybrid solar project. Certainly, in addition to the fact that it's a renewable and battery storage project, which is much needed in the state of California, I am especially encouraged about the project due to the fact that the owner and developer is a small business enterprise and considered from the local area. Given that this is such a prominent project in the state, and the fact that the owner is a small business enterprise, I feel like it's something the board and county should support. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, this is Scott O'Neill, SCOTTO''NEIL, and I'm Executive Director of the Indian Wells Valley Economic Development Corporation, and I am wanting to speak in behalf of item number 5 in the afternoon session on tomorrow. And this is regarding the solar panels out near Inyo. And I just wanted to voice my support for the project. I think it's be great for the Indian Wells Valley. And I am working with a data center company that's interested in buying power from that particular project. And the data center company would be a state-of-the-art data center that's got high resilience and security. And it would create about 50 additional high-tech jobs in the Inyo-Kern Ridgecrest area. And so we would really like to see this project go through and give it complete support from our perspective. So anyways, thank you very much. Bye now.
Yeah, my name is David Garrison. I'm the exalted ruler of the Trona Elks Lodge, and I had written a letter in support of RB Inyo Kern Solar, which is item number 5. I just wanted to call and verbally express my support for this project. Thank you.
That concludes the voicemail messages. Now we have several callers on the line. We'll start with Jamie Brower, who's with the applicant. Ms. Brower, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. We have your PowerPoint presentation ready to display as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a short PowerPoint presentation. I'm sorry, is it being displayed?
Yes, I'm sorry, the PowerPoint is up. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jamie Brower, JAYMIEBRAUER, and I represent the project proponent Robbie Barker, RL Capital, and RB Inyo Kern Solar. First, I would like to thank Ms. Oviatt, Mr. Murphy, Ms. Slayton, Ms. Candia, and the county planning staff for their work on this project. We greatly appreciate their support and guidance. This is a very short presentation that will highlight some of the key aspects of the project. And I would also like to point out that we have the project's land use attorney on the call if there are questions that need to be addressed later. And we would like to have an opportunity to rebut any opposition that may be presented. Next slide, please. Ms. Oviatt has already clearly hit the technical guidance. We can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to highlight a few of the key points. Some of them have already been mentioned. Mr. Barker is rather unique in his interest in developing solar in Kern County. He is not a professional solar developer and not affiliated with any of the trade organizations cited in the letter Ms. Oviatt read. And he has also agreed to all the mitigation measures and conditions of approval that's set forth in the EIR, including the cumulative impact charge and those that mitigation measure that was clarified for the record. The project will be primarily built by local employees of Mr. Barker, and many of them live in the Ridgecrest and Inyo Kern area. At this point, the project has been well represented by the staff and staff report, and unless there are questions, that will end our presentation.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Did you have any questions?
Oh, okay. Were there any other questions or any questions from the board? Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Linda Parker. Linda, if you will unmute your phone by pressing *6, you can address the board.
Thank you. Hi, this is Linda Parker. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Peters and board members. My name is Linda Parker, and I have been in the renewable energy industry since 1995. I just wanted to point out today that this particular project, the RB Inyo Kern Solar Project, is cited extremely well. The applicant has agreed to all of his conditions, and I know you've heard all of those things before, but you also have to understand that he has received a number of letters of support. He is a very active community member, and we just want to see this project come to fruition, and I would greatly appreciate your strong support of this today. It's very important to the Indian Wells Valley. So I greatly appreciate your time, and again, I would hope that you would support this project today. Thank you.
Next, we have Andrew Bell. Mr. Bell, if you're on the line, press *6 and to unmute your phone, and then you may address the board. I don't see Mr. Bell's in the queue. We'll come back to him. Zachary Kearns, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. You may address the board. Mr. Kearns, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Please unmute your phone by pressing *6. Okay, we'll move on to Aiden Marshall. Please unmute your phone by pressing *6. You may address the board.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, honorable board members. My name is Aiden Marshall, Citizens for Responsible Solar. Citizens is an unincorporated association of labor organizations. Members live, work, and raise their families. Citizens advocates for responsible, sustainable. They have interest in enforcing environmental laws that require in their communities and ensure a safe living and working environment for their members. The EIR and the Mitigation Measure Monitoring Program for the Inyo Kern Solar Project should not be approved by the board because the EIR's conclusions regarding impacts on biological resources are not supported by substantial evidence and fail to comply with the law. Specifically, the county failed to provide and analyze substantial evidence regarding bird strikes that was presented to the county in comments on the EIR. The county also failed to make a good faith effort to describe existing conditions for biological resources, which is necessary to enable the county to. Finally, the county failed to require feasible and effective mitigation measures required to reduce impacts to less than significant. We thus urge the Board of Supervisors to recommend against approval of the EIR, the findings, and mitigation measure monitoring plan, and to remand them back to staff. We urge the Board of Supervisors to deny the application for 2 conditional use permits and an amendment to the specific plan until the county prepares a legally adequate EIR, findings, and mitigation measure monitoring program that comply with CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Shannon Eddy. Ms. Eddy, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. You may address the board.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Chair Peters and board members. My name is Shannon Eddy. I'm the Executive Director of the Large Scale Solar Association. We don't have a position on this solar project, but we were alerted that our letter might be brought in, so I did want to just jump in and offer a few thoughts. First, I do want to clarify that the letter that was sent by my organization, SEIA and ACPA, wasn't intended to provide a link to any specific project. We were rather speaking to general tax exclusion issues, which Director Oviatt went into in quite some detail. We also conveyed with that letter our own economic analysis of the county revenues from large solar projects. And more than anything, we also wanted to address concerns that we had with the $550 per net acre per year suggestion. And perhaps most importantly, we're asking just for a dialogue with the county. I do want to drill down just briefly onto the fee issue to say that we don't take issue with the accommodation made for this project or the other projects that were deemed complete as of December 8th of last year. Our concern mainly relates to the suggestion that the projects should pay this $550 per net acre per year, which is really an unreasonable out-of-market cost projection for potential future projects. And so on that basis and understanding the economic pressures that are at play right now, not just for Kern County, but really across the country, and in recognition of the state of play of clean energy development in California and a host of other factors, some of which Lorelei touched on in her comments, we really recognize there's a need for us to dialogue as we all come to terms with all these different factors and the future of the solar industry and then Kern's role in that process. So this certainly, of course, isn't the time or the place to get into all the detail along those lines, but we really would like to dialogue with all of you on these issues going forward. We do consider Kern County to be a fundamental and important partner with the solar industry. There's going to be a ton of new solar builds in the state based on our clean energy targets, and we just look forward to talking with you about how we can work together going forward to meet some of these mutual needs. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Our next caller is Michael Turnipseed. Mr. Turnipseed, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Members of the board, Michael Turnipseed, representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association, called to be in support of the RB Inyo Kern Solar Project. But basically, more important, the fact that he realized that as a businessman, he had a social responsibility and has agreed to the impact fee. We think all solar, whether it's existing or future, needs to take social responsibility and pay an impact fee because they do create impacts. And we would like to be part of that discussion also about going forward and how we get responsible businesses to support the county with responsible impact fees. Thank you very much for your time. Good day.
Thank you. I see Andrew Bell has joined the meeting. Mr. Bell, if you'd like to speak, please press the 6 to unmute your phone. You may address the board.
Hi, this is Andrew Bell. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, sorry about the mishap earlier on connectivity. Dear Chairman and honourable members of the board, we have little to add other than the comments that we heard orally have been addressed with regard to biological and other matters in the project repeatedly from Planning Commission to here. We see nothing new and have nothing to add other than that those issues have already been covered. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Zachary Kearns, if you're able to unmute your phone, you may address the board. Press star 6.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I echo what Mr. Bell just said. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier on our end, but nothing further to add. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing and return to the board for any comments or questions. Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the recommendation as amended by Ms. Oviatt? Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Please cast your votes.
The vote is all ayes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8 is also under Planning and Natural Resources, and that, oh, excuse me, that's item, okay, here we go. That is the request to Governor Newsom, California Public Utilities Commission, and California Energy Commission for action on solar tax exclusion for large-scale commercial solar. And I will hand it back over to Director Oviatt.
Thank you, Chairman Peters. This is a follow-up on our December 8th solar report that we brought to your board, which shows that the solar tax exclusion has cost us $103 million of lost revenue over the last 10 years for the existing projects. As you noted on item 5, which you just took action on, staff has reviewed the California Environmental Quality Act, looked at the cumulative impacts, and will be addressing each individual environmental impact report for that solution. I want to be clear for the public that we are only talking about large-scale solar. We are not talking about solar on people's roofs. We are not also talking about behind-the-meter solar, which we have some very large projects, where, for example, a cold storage or some other use decides to put solar on their property for their own use. We are not talking about that. We are only talking about large-scale solar that is specifically for the grid and goes into power purchase agreements. As you heard from the representative from at least one of the associations, and we understand we have another of the associations on the line to speak for public comment, they continue to believe that your board should solve this issue. First of all, your board is not empowered under the California Environmental Quality Act to have a dialogue on an environmental impact report. We will bring them forward individually. Your board has now directed with this first decision that this first 10 could have this accommodation. We believe that their lobbying efforts should be directed to the state of California. The state of California imposed this solar tax exclusion. The state of California, with the California Public Utilities Commission, controls the electricity rates, and the California Energy Commission is in charge of large-scale transmission planning and other sorts of planning. Therefore, in consultation with the CAO, we have determined that it is time to send a letter to Governor Newsom and these other entities, asking them to lead this effort. Lead this effort to find a solution. This is the wrong venue. Kern County provides 25% of the energy. Why do we have to solve this issue? And so we are asking for the governor to lead the effort. There are many, many solutions that possibly could be designed, and we are open to all of them, but we're not clear why we should be the ones who have to resolve this with the industry. Second, I'd like to note that there are two other bills. There is a bill on your consent agenda, which you have approved, opposition to SB 267, which is once again an opportunity for the solar industry to cut the amount of revenue possible to local government. In addition, these are the same associations that brought the bill forward that was signed by the governor to cut the sales tax by 50%. So these associations are clearly powerful in Sacramento. I would ask that your board, in the dialogue with these associations today, ask them to go to Sacramento and design a solution. So the action today, we have prepared a letter with the extensive collaboration with the CAO that we believe distills our experience here and our request, which is for Governor Newsom to lead the effort to either rescind the solar tax exclusion or provide a subvention to local governments that host. And whatever solution they come up with, I'm sure we would be open to listen to. But at this point, we have no evidence. There is not one bill, not one discussion from the industry. We have seen no action, and we believe it's time.
Thank you. Have we received any public comment on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one person in Teams waiting to speak to your board. Mr. Umhoff, if you could unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Rick Umhoff. I'm the California Director at the Solar Energy Industries Association, SEIA. We are one of the associations that was a signatory to the letter that was referenced previously, and we are the National Association for the Solar Industry. We do appreciate the opportunity to speak on today's board meeting. We represent over 1,000 companies, many of whom do business in Kern. And I just want to say, first off, we recognize Kern County as a leader and a partner in solar development. And I want to make sure that that is clearly heard today. The other point I want to make and make sure that this is clearly heard is that the solar industry is discussing and has been assessing the future of the solar property tax exclusion for utility scale solar installations. And we are open to a discussion around revisiting that exclusion as the sunset date approaches. We do not put it on the onus on Kern to address this issue as was suggested. However, this change would be a change in a long-standing tax policy that would significantly impact not only the solar industry, but ratepayers, California's economy, and the ability for California to meet its climate targets. And despite the earlier comments, which I appreciated from Director Oviatt, this issue does impact all solar projects and is a complicated issue for the industry. We represent companies from across the spectrum. And so as we work through this with our membership, it does take some time for us to sort of work through the complexities of this and sort of wrap our arms around such a big policy change. So given these significant impacts, it is imperative that we engage in thoughtful discussions with state and local governments and other parties, including Kern, to make sure that we are sort of moving forward in a thoughtful manner, especially in light of the amount of gigawatts of solar that will need to come online in the coming decades. I want to make a couple of other comments. I think Shannon Eddy did a good job kind of pointing to our economic study that came in with our letter. I would encourage the board to look at that. Our analysis did find significant economic benefits to the county from solar investment over the last decade or so. including $13.6 million in property tax revenues, as well as $31.3 million in sales of use tax revenues. So I just want to make sure that analysis is seen as hopefully a useful tool to just add to the discussion to better inform our collective understanding of project economics and the county revenues that do come in from these projects, even if there are areas of disagreement between us on those points. The other point, or a couple quick last points I'll make. One is, we sent in the letter first to flag our concern about the $550 fee, which was, as was said earlier, but also just to open up a dialogue on these issues. And we were surprised to see the response to be a letter to the governor. As I said earlier in my comments, we are absolutely open to talking to Kern and other stakeholders about the future of the solar property tax exclusion. And if that hasn't been made clear, or we haven't communicated that effectively, that responsibility is on us, and we absolutely understand that. And we are here to have that conversation. But again, it is going to be a complex conversation, so we do need to make sure we move forward in a thoughtful manner. And then finally, I will say on SB 267 quickly, which was mentioned, this is a bill that is merely a clarification of existing law. It is not an attempt to expand anything or make any new law. And it would actually impact the ability of Kern residents to put solar on their roofs. So it would impact behind the meter solar installation. It will make it, if SB 267 is not passed, it will make it more difficult for Kern residents to install solar on their roofs and take advantage of the federal ITC, which is currently free money on the table from the federal government that will expire in a couple of years. And so all we are seeking is a clarification of that existing law. It's also needed to help existing solar projects that have been financed by the federal investment tax credit, who will be put at risk if those projects don't get clarification in existing law. That's all it is. It's simply a clarification of existing law. So I'll stop there, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have no further public comment.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff, Ms. Oviatt and the CAO's office that worked hard on this letter. This letter, in my view, is a response to the governor's assertion and his radical environmentalist allies that green energy can replace our oil and gas industry here in Kern County. That's a joke, it's a lie, and it's insulting given the current tax structure. With this exclusion in place for property tax, green energy will never replace the economic impact, the positive economic impact of the oil and gas industry in Kern County. And this letter, to me, is a response to that false assertion by the governor and his radical environmentalist allies. And I think it's very important for us to send this. We're either going to get this exclusion rescinded, or we're going to come up with a local solution here where we are able to provide the necessary public services like fire, sheriff, libraries that our taxpayers in Kern County expect and deserve. We have been subsidizing the green energy electrons that have been going to Los Angeles and the Bay Area for long enough. And I, for one, here on the Board of Supervisors, have had it. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve this letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez?
Well, Zach, I'd like you to tell us how you really feel, because now is the time that we put it all out there. Thank you, Zach, for your passion on the issue. And I know that our friends in the renewables industry appreciate the position that Kern County is in. I know that you do. You've been great partners, and I appreciate all the openness that I hear today on the lines from various actors within the industry. No one wants to pay more, especially in California. It's a complicated state to do business in. So I appreciate the position that you're in, but I also appreciate the reality of the facts as they have been presented to us. I happen to trust incredibly the information and analysis that comes out of our planning department. So I certainly would love to compare numbers and get to an outcome that is reasonable and makes sense for all of us. But certainly the sentiment as expressed by Supervisor Scrivener, I think, is pretty broadly held as we observe the actions of this board and its priorities over the last several decades, in particular the decade that I've been on this board. And Zach in particular, his district bears a remarkable amount of the view shed changes and frankly the cultural changes that occur as a result of modernization. Kern County is lucky to be on the cutting edge of that. We have a planning department bar none, a brilliant CAO, excellent council, the list goes on and on. So I think we're in a good position to stake this claim and to also invite again for greater conversation and resolution our partners in renewables to think about the larger portfolio role that Kern County plays and the way in which our larger interests are at stake and at play here in a way that is existential for Kern County. It is not a small deal. So thank you so much again for the partnership, for all the incredible investment into Kern County. I love Kern County and I love your investment. We want to see that coming, but I appreciate that you appreciate the particular predicament that we're in. So I'm going to second the motion and thank you again for what I know is going to be healthy conversation, robust. We are most certainly to have some disagreements, but I believe that we will get to a good place. So I feel hopeful. Thank you. And Director Oviatt and your department, really, I can't say enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Any other comments from the board? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The vote is all ayes.
Thank you. Next, we will consider item number 19 under the Public Works Department, and that is a request to set a public hearing to consider a rate increase and ordinance establishing the schedule of solid waste management program service charges for residential property for fiscal year 2021 through 2022, and providing for the collection of the same on the tax roll. And I would invite Director of Public Works, Mr. Craig Pope, to share a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This simply is to set a hearing date, but there were 19 other hearing dates set on the consent item, and this one is slightly different in that we are setting a hearing to increase a land use fee not only to county residents, but to all residential parcels within the county. So that includes all the cities also. So we're going the extra steps to make sure we get the message out. Since this we had a presentation to your board to basically describe what we're attempting to do. And since that time, we have met with the city staff virtually. We have also sent written material out to the city manager's office. I personally have tried to reach out and contact and got a hold of many of the city managers just to make sure they're getting the word. We also put out the offer that if any of them wanted us to talk to their city councils, we'd be glad to do so. One city did take us up on that offer. Many of the cities were actually very supportive of it, and a couple even wrote letters of support for us. Some were concerned about just the fact that there was an increase, and that was enough to make them a little bit skittish, but they were supportive of the idea. Everybody has a problem with illegal dumping and wants to find a way to do it, to fix it. One was just flat out opposed. They were liked the idea of it, but said this was just the wrong time to be looking for an increase in land use fee. So if your board decides to set a hearing for us today, we will be moving ahead by sending out a mail out to every single residential party. And that will give them an opportunity to voice their concerns and vote yea or nay on the whole thing. After that, we will do, or after the mail out, we will do virtual meetings. We'll be setting up a lot of virtual meetings to try and reach out to as many people as we can. And then on May 25th, the ballots will be counted or summed up for your board, and we'll see where we're at on this. With that, I'll ask for any questions you might have and look to your board to possibly set a hearing date of May 25th.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Are there any comments from the board? Any members of the public wanting to speak to this item?
I'm sorry, no, there is no public comment.
Thank you. So, seeing no comments, I will entertain a motion.
Craig, thank you for everything that you do. Motion on staff's recommendation.
I'll second that. Please cast your votes.
The vote is all ayes.
Thank you. Next is item number 73 under the General Services Division. That is the proposed agreement for lease with MD VAC Investments LLC for use of 34970 McMurtry Avenue in Bakersfield as coroner's office and warehouse space by the Kern County Sheriff's Office for a 15-year term effective March 23rd, 2021. And good morning, or good afternoon, Mr. Zervis. I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Peters and members of the board. The item before you today is a 15-year lease of a property at 34970 McMurtry Avenue in Bakersfield, California with MD VAC Investments LLC for use as a coroner, office, and warehouse space for the Kern County Sheriff's Department. The Kern County Coroner provides services to the entire 8,163 square miles of the county, including people in all incorporated cities and unincorporated areas of the county. The existing coroner's facility, located at the Kern Medical Campus, is approximately 10,000 square feet and was built in 1974, when the county's population was roughly 350,000. At that time, the coroner averaged roughly 1,800 cases per year. Today, the county's population is over 913,000, and the coroner handles roughly 4,100 cases per year. That's a 161% increase in population and a 128% increase in cases. This cumulative growth has stretched this facility to its capacity. The COVID-19 pandemic has only highlighted and compounded the need for more space at the coroner and morgue facility. During this time, we had significant increases in coroner-attended deaths, longer processing and holding times, and COVID-19 and state legislation surrounding it created more logistical issues for the coroner. This need for a new coroner's facility has been known for some time now. In fact, it was discussed in a finding and recommendation in the 2019-2020 grand jury report, to which the county concurred. And over the past 2 years, the county has toured and researched over a dozen properties in the greater Bakersfield area. The proposed project was selected based on several factors, including size, location, accessibility, financial impact, and potential for future growth. This facility, located on McMurtry Avenue, is an existing concrete tilt-up building that will be retrofitted to the coroner's needs. It includes 107,000 square feet of office, warehouse, and coroner space. This space is large enough not only to accommodate the existing coroner's needs with room for future growth, but will also house the public administrator and civil divisions of the Sheriff's Department, with room to add other sheriff functions as needed. Co-locating these functions not only increases operational efficiencies, but it also saves existing rental costs for the civil division and reduces coroner transportation costs. This lease also includes an option to purchase an additional 4.5 acres of adjacent land for future development of county facilities. As a branch of local government, the county has an infinite life, and the coroner function is a county service that must be continually performed indefinitely. The county, as a permanent entity, must plan for the long term, and for that reason, unless there are specific short-term needs, it is recommended that the county invest in assets and facilities it owns. Although the proposed project is a 15-year lease at a cost of roughly $2.2 million per year, the plan for this project is to exercise its purchase option at the end of year 3 to purchase the property at a fixed price of approximately $22.4 million. Exercising this purchase option at this time will result in the lowest total cost for this project, estimated at $36.3 million, including the interest cost of financing the purchase and the cost of the additional 4.5 acres of land. If the county is able to exercise that purchase option without the need to borrow, that would further reduce the total cost of this project to $28.5 million. As we're all aware, the county's budget is extremely tight due to stagnant growth in assessed valuation and other discretionary revenue sources, not keeping pace with increased costs. And for that reason, the fiscal plan for this project has been carefully constructed to utilize one-time revenue sources and minimize the financial impact on the county's operational budget. Under this plan, the one-time project-related expenditures, the 4.5-acre land purchase, and the first 3 years of the net operating lease costs, totaling roughly $10.3 million, would be paid for using the infrastructure replacement designation. This designation has been built up over the years with one-time revenues, such as one-time sales tax revenues from wind energy projects, and set aside for specific one-time infrastructure needs such as this new coroner's facility. For these first 3 years, there is no fiscal impact on the annual operating budget. After the third year, and assuming the financing of the purchase option, there is an ongoing net cost of $1.8 million that would need to be funded through the annual operating budget. This is the most conservative scenario, and if the county is able to utilize additional one-time revenues or designations to exercise that purchase option without financing, the operational budget impact would be eliminated. The coroner facility is a critical county function, and this facility replacement is needed to ensure the county's ability to continue to provide these services effectively into the future. The proposed financial plan leverages one-time revenues for these one-time costs to minimize the financial impact on the county's general fund. It is for these reasons that this lease agreement is recommended for approval by your board today. I would like to turn over this presentation to your sheriff and coroner for further comment, after which I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zervis. As this board knows, this project probably has started in the early 70s to get out of this building. That's almost 50 years. 50 years. Isn't it today your 50th birthday? That's ironic. It is a long time. That's why I was pointing out. Yes. Oh, coming from these eyes, it's not that bad, really. The building that we're in is somewhere between 10 and 12,000 square feet. The building is housed or designed to house 30 to 35 bodies that await autopsies. Today, we have approximately 175 bodies in various places. What this board, I think, is now aware of, we had a mass casualty trailer that we were using stored at Lerdo to house a few of the bodies. We've since had to purchase a large trailer to store more bodies, and they're stored at our jail at Lerdo. This is not, if it was my relative, I might be just a little bit offended. We kept Charlie Manson there for some time with people, and I would be a little bit offended if they were relatives of mine. We spend almost $1 million a year having these bodies transported from point A to point B, back to A. It's a constant movement, and we spend almost $1 million a year doing that. This is going to help in that vein a lot. The Public Administrator's Office is an integral part of the coroner's office. We have Don Ratliff, who is in charge. We have Crystal Rubio, who does the public administration work, and they're both phenomenal employees. We're absolutely blessed to have these two people doing what they do. I don't know how Don's got through the last year. And I think it was Supervisor Maggart that asked her if we could make it another year, and her answer was, it's not optional, but it's iffy. And we're absolutely at that point that we have to do something, and this is a fix for this county for many, many years to come. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Zervis for the work that he's done, the work that Don and Katie have done, Katie Watkins from county employee. They've done phenomenal work to get us here. We've been through several buildings trying to get this done, and Dawn has been a bulldog. She would not give up. I think quite frankly, she wore them down. But however we got there, it doesn't matter to me. It is absolutely necessary. This pandemic has taught us a very valuable lesson on what can happen to a county when it comes to the coroner operation. In California, 50 of the 58 sheriffs are coroners. And the reason for that is because they get a little more attention than a standalone coroner's office. But I will be honest with you and tell you that coroner's offices do not get the love that they should get from county government, from the sheriff. It's just simply not a sexy item to talk about, and it doesn't really help our image. Most sheriffs are up here in front of their board talking about more deputies on the streets. I'm not like that, but well, okay, I am like that. But this is really, really. I thought that might just slide past. This really is an important, probably the most important thing that we've done in my 14 or 15 years as the sheriff, is to get out of that old building into a state-of-the-art coroner's facility that is 6 or 7 times the size of where we're at. And I think this board, when we're done, if you approve this, will be extremely proud of what your county staff has done and how they helped us get there, because the sheriff couldn't do this. If I stood up in front of this board and tried to sell this, it wouldn't happen. I had to have people like Katie and like Dawn and Mr. Zervis to put this plan together to have the least impact financially in probably the worst economic times in the history of our county. But it's imperative that we do this, and I would ask your board to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Has there been any public comment received on this item?
No, Mr. Chairman, there's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say first, thank you to Mr. Zervis and Mr. Alsop and the CAO's office for all their work on this. Our sheriff and his deputies and all their staff are absolute rock stars, and anything that we can do to help them be more efficient and better at what they're doing, give them resources to help them with their job, I'm more than happy to support that. So is there any comments? Oh, Supervisor Perez?
Thank you. Donnie, this matter is long overdue, and I so appreciate the passion by which you bring the matter to the board. I've met with Dawn and her team. These are the most fabulous women, really the most incredible team, utterly devoted to people in their passing and in honoring them and doing the right thing. I think they are extraordinary. That department is extraordinary, and they have been grossly underfunded and, to your point, just not given the kind of attention that they deserve. Not because we don't love them, but we have so many things we work on so importantly that it's easy to overlook such a department. But I know them well. I have spent time with them in their facility. It is absolutely the right time to act. This last year, to your point, Donnie, has been compelling utterly with our capacity issues, but this issue in particular. We have a team of county family members there that, to me, are the absolute best of us, Dottie, and have put their entire life and soul into the dignified handling of our loved ones as they pass. And I am so grateful that you have brought this matter in the manner that you have, because it's clear that you're very serious about it and that you understand that it's time to act, and we're long overdue. And I know that team that's working there is utterly grateful. So I'm so happy to support this recommendation, and I want to say thank you, because we're behind on this, and it's time to act.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, one thing I neglected to say, in 1974, you heard the stats, we had 300,000 people in the county. We had 35 homicides. This last year, we had 143 homicides. Our population is almost a million people, and quite frankly, we had the same staff numbers that we had in 1974 today. How they do it is unbelievable.
Absolutely. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
Did you make a motion?
No, there has been a motion.
I guess I should have.
I move approval.
Okay. David made a motion. Supervisor Couch, and I'll second that.
Great. Please cast your votes.
The vote is all ayes.
Thank you. Having no additional items to consider, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, April 13th at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Without objection, we are adjourned.
Thanks, Donnie. Nice job.
Getting tested. It's the only way to know.